Hello, everybody. This is Will Eisner from Awareness Incorporated, and I'm very happy to welcome you to today's Awareness Incorporated webinar. Today we've got a featured presenter who we're very excited to have for you today. Andrew Davis is going to tell you about the new media life cycle, a framework for understanding the social universe. For those of you who haven't been to these webinars with us before at Awareness, we host these webinars, usually about 2 or 3 a month. We bring in some of the smartest people in the social media and social marketing space, and we present them to you free for you to learn about what's going on in social marketing and social media. So I'm just going to get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about our presenter, and I'm going to talk a little bit about just the sort of mechanics for today, and then we'll get going. I should note, by the way, that I am not Mike Lewis. I am Will Eisner, but we'll talk about that in a sec. But I suppose some of you might see that I'm showing up as Mike Lewis, but I'm Will. So let's talk about our presenter today. Andrew, can you hear me okay? Are you able to talk?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay, great. So Andrew Davis is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Tipping Point Lab. Many of you probably have heard of Andrew. He's a guy who works with a lot of different kinds of clients, and pretty impressive ones, to help them untangle the web. And for those of you who don't know Tipping Point Lab, if you're looking for an agency that has real expertise in basically the online marketing space, particularly in the area of helping you focus your online activities in places that really drive real revenue, well, that's what they do at Tipping Point's Lab. And so Andrew may tell you a little bit about that, but if you're interested in that and getting in touch with a real expert about that, Andrew's Twitter information is there, as well as his address, his email address. I am Will Eisner. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Awareness Incorporated, and with me today is Sal Gilberto, who's also here at Awareness. Hey, Sal.
Hello, everyone.
And Sal and I are going to be here behind the scenes kind of answering your questions, working with you through the WebEx chat or through Twitter. So if you want to reach out to us, with the WebEx chat, just make sure you address it to all panelists, and then we'll get it. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, and we'll be looking for the Awareness Inc. hashtag. So let's go over some house rules here, or just sort of some mechanical stuff. If you have a question for us or for Andrew during the presentation, the easiest thing to do is for you to tweet it with a #AwarenessInc hashtag. We will be monitoring that, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation when we'll be reading your questions to Andrew. We are also available here on the WebEx chat. If you're having audio issues, chat us, chat Sal. He will give you the dial-in information, which is also in your acceptance email. I'm seeing a few people telling us that there is some echo. If you're hearing echo, please try and, I was going to say, please, you can dial in with the information. It may also be that once I go mute, it might stop echoing. So, Andrew, it might be a good idea for you to mute your phone just for now in case that's what's causing the echo. But you'll be allowed to speak shortly, Andrew.
All right.
So, great. So before we get started, I just want to take a couple minutes telling you guys about who we are at Awareness. We're very happy to give this time to Andrew to present to you, but we'd like you to know just a little bit about who we are. And Awareness, we're a company that makes tools for marketers. So you guys, a lot of you at least are probably marketers. Well, what we do is we make tools for marketers. And the main thing that we make that we talk about is the Awareness Social Marketing Hub, which is a tool that helps marketers centralize their social marketing efforts. So if you market to Facebook, to Twitter, YouTube, Flickr, you want to publish, manage, measure, and engage, that's what we do. Now I'm going to take literally just about 5 minutes here to kind of just tell you what we see in the market and what we do, and then we're going to hand it off to Andrew. But as you can see, we provide tools to a lot of different companies, including some very big brands. We work with some very big partners, and we also work with smaller companies, too, that are doing online marketing. So let's talk about what we're seeing really quickly in terms of the challenges in the market. We talk to a lot of companies here, and we hear a common set of issues that come up. The first is that marketers tell us that they're overwhelmed. There's too many channels. There's too many too much information coming back. It's too hard to decide exactly where to be effective. We hear people say that they're having trouble showing their ROI with the social marketing activities. Prove it that it's really worth it to spend this time on these different social channels. People tell us that they're losing control. They feel like there's the corporate voice is distributed in a way that it wasn't before. A lot of people have access to different accounts, and it's really just hard to maintain control of what's going on. And finally, people tell us that they don't feel that strategic. So, if you're like Sal and I, you like to start off your quarter to say what your goals are, what do you want to accomplish, and how does that map to the company's goals? Well, a lot of people feel like what they're doing in the social space is really reactive to what's going on. And it's not the way that people want to operate. So basically, long story short, the tool that we have created to help address these problems that we hear in the market is called the Awareness Social Marketing Hub. It's a hosted tool. It's a SaaS tool. It helps marketers publish, manage, measure, and engage to the most important social channels today. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Flickr, etc. SlideShare is a new channel that we support. And I'll be very happy to set up a demonstration for you if you just email me, and in a minute I'll tell you a little bit about just how you can get to that demonstration area. It's a monthly subscription. Our entry-level cost is really manageable for a lot of organizations, and it's a really great tool both for companies that already have a team and a bunch of people working on social marketing, or people who are just ramping up with only one or two people working on it. In a nutshell, the hub is built to fix the problems that we talked about. It helps you gain control of social media programs by centralizing your publication management, measuring, and engagement efforts. It helps you evolve from being just tactical and responding to stuff by being strategic, by letting you do stuff like predict success, see trends, and schedule future content. And finally, it helps you specifically determine your ROI for your social marketing activity by producing familiar-looking reports that map to traditional online marketing metrics and help you show both to yourself, to your team, and to your execs the value that you're creating in the marketing space, the social marketing space. So we love the hub here. We love to talk about it. Sal and I love to give a demo about it every 2 weeks. And the next one we're going to do is going to be next Wednesday at 2 p.m. You can go to tinyurl/hubdemo to sign up now. And you can also contact us through the emails. And additionally, we'll send you a follow-up email after this demo, and you'll be able to do some follow-up actions with that. So that's it. The Social Marketing Hub, our Strategist Edition starts at $250 a month. It's a great tool. And it's being used by a lot of social marketers today to really increase their success. So with that, that's basically what I want to say for now. We're going to have a few kind of closing comments, but we're pretty much ready for you to get started, Andrew. So I'm going to unmute you here. You can unmute yourself.
All right. I think I'm unmuted.
Great. And I'm going to change you to be the presenter. And now, Andrew, let's just make sure your screen is presenting all right, and then I'm going to hand it off to you, and then we'll be following up with anything you need to get us from Twitter for your presentation, and we'll be collecting questions for you for the end of the presentation. And we see your Prezi desktop now, Andrew, so you're ready to go. Great. I think you're ready to go, but I don't hear you all of a sudden. Andrew, you there? Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry. Let me unmute you. All right. So now you should be unmuted again, Andrew.
Hey, there you go.
All right. So now you got your desktop and your voice, and we'll hand it off to you.
That's perfect. I swore while I was unmuted, so that was perfect timing. All right. Well, yes, I'm going to try to walk through a concept we call the new media lifecycle, and give you a little bit of information about how you can maybe apply it in your day-to-day efforts. Whether you're kind of a new media strategist or a social media guy or just trying to determine where your audience is, hopefully this will help. So I know you've already given some information about me. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Tipping Point Labs, and I'm all about trying to find answers to a lot of the common questions. Where is your audience online? What are they consuming? How can you add value? and the new media life cycle kind of fits into that concept, very strongly. So for a quick and easy example, I don't know if you guys out there have seen flavors.me, but these started popping up in the last year or so. And it's like an online business card. It's basically all the places you participate online, and exactly your links and how to get in contact with you. So I have one at flavors.me/tpldrew with all these links. These are the ones that I can remember the passwords to. So I probably have a million more places online I've participated. I just can't remember where they are. So a concept like this is hard to really understand whether it's adding value to my experience or not, unless you try to take it into the context of a larger world and understand how many people are using it, how fast is the adoption rate, what are the factors that might kind of cause this to evolve in the community. So as soon as flavors.me popped up, you see something like about.me, right? So I have an about.me/tpldrew page, same concept, exact same execution. And if I'm a social media guy or I'm a new marketing guy online, I'm like, what the hell, where do I participate? Do I create an about.me profile and start promoting that, or flavors.me? And that's what the new media lifecycle helps you determine where you're going to kind of push your efforts and energies. So I have a quick side note. I'm going to give away 3 of my books, Real-Time Marketing and PR. Now, when I say give away 3 of my books, what I mean is they are 3 books I own. Currently, they are not books I wrote. So this is a book by David Bierman Scott. I'm giving this book away, Real-Time Marketing and PR by David Bierman Scott, because I was lucky enough to sit down with him last year, and he's actually talked about in detail in the book the new media life cycle and what it means to real-time marketing and PR. So, it's relevant to this conversation, and I'll give away the 3 books to the 3 best questions asked in the forum, or the 3 best platforms that people suggest we analyze, because we're going to do some analysis in real time. So, make sure you're participating so that Will and Sal can help me pick a winner for those books. All right. So the new media life cycle. Well, what the hell is it? That's the first question most people ask. And the way we came up with this was we really started with, looking at this really confusing landscape that most of our clients were encompassing, right? I don't know if most of you, I hope, have seen the Conversation Prism, which is, something that Brian Solis and Jeff 3 put together. Really, really wonderful kind of illustrative model of what the world looks like. And if you haven't seen it before, each one of these little petals you see here, from yellow to green in this case, are different, types of communication. So you've got music, events, wiki, live casting, and then all those little logos that you can barely see, thank goodness, are all the channels that you can participate on that are just wikis or just music or just events or just pictures. And, these petals go on, and the logos get bigger, and there's new logos every day. Like, look at Twitter ecosystems. It's just hacked with all sorts of logos. And our clients are asking, well, these things show up every day. How do I know where I participate? If I want to put video up, do I put it on Vimeo, YouTube, Rever, all of them, none of them, one of them? How do I figure that out? So the new media lifecycle is meant to help answer this question for you specifically. Actually, yeah.
I just want to jump in and let you know that there is a bit of a lag.
Oh, sure.
So, it's a little bit behind. Actually, it should catch up in a minute, but it's a little bit behind. So just keep that in mind as you present, that people might be seeing something that's a little bit behind what you're showing. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. It'll make sense when they get there, I guess. It's like an audio delay. I'm like a sonic boom. All right, I'll try. So over the next 15 minutes or so, if you guys want to start thinking of some online social channels, perhaps, that we can evaluate live near the end of this webinar, that makes it a lot of fun, and it also kind of puts it in perspective. So, if you're interested in location-based services, maybe you want us to compare Foursquare and Gowalla, maybe even Facebook Places, you could add to that list. So think of those things and make sure you're using the hashtag on Twitter or the chat to get those to Will and the gang, and we'll kind of walk through those when we get there. So the new media life cycle started as really something related to the Gartner hype cycle. And if you don't know what that is, it's not a big deal, but the concept is that, you can actually track any technology through a series of phases that help you determine how valuable the technology is at any point in time. So I started looking at the Gartner hype cycle with our team at Tipping Point. Brad Schwarzenbach helped with this, and we actually ended up looking at this and saying, this is great, but I don't know what visibility means on the left, and as maturity goes, I don't know if this actually applies specifically to new media channels, and maybe we can go one level deeper. So that's what we attempted to do. So this is what the new media life cycle looks like. And what it does, in effect, is give you a context to understand how fast something is moving in the new media space. So, for example, if we looked at Twitter, which we will in a second, you can actually track it through these phases, and it helps you understand where the value is and what time and energy you should spend and what kind of content or, interactions you should have on these channels. And the 7 phases are pretty straightforward. We'll go through each one quickly, but it basically goes from experimentation to what I call the maintain phase. And every channel we've looked at, doesn't matter if it's YouTube or Flickr or Twitter or some new thing that some guy came up with in his basement yesterday, all of these channels, we believe, go through these 7 phases and sometimes multiple times. So we'll go through it quickly. At the experimentation phase, this is basically when friends and family tell a bunch of friends that, or a couple of developers in a basement tell a bunch of friends, hey, we've started something new. It's maybe called Twitter or it's maybe called YouTube. Here's what we think it does. Why don't you try it? And it just, is kind of pushed out into the marketplace in a very organic way with no real push from a marketing standpoint or anything like that. And in the experimentation phase, the family, either likes it or doesn't like it, and they kind of move it along. Well, at some point, it moves into the next phase, which we call adoption, all right? And adoption is basically the next level out. It's outside of the friends and family realm, and it starts to attract a new type of user that's actually interested in what the channel offers and probably has determined what the value might be in the sense that it provides them with a new way to interact or a new medium to deliver content. Like YouTube versus Twitter was, it's just kind of text-based, so text is not the innovation there, but the way you're using it is. So in the adoption phase, you start to see these new kind of early adopters actually trying the platform and trying to figure it out. When you move into the gestation phase, this is the most important phase, and this is where the content and the concept for the platform actually gels. This is when everybody's light bulb goes off and they go, holy smokes, like sharing video online like YouTube is unbelievably powerful. This could be really cool, and there are really, really clear uses for the platform in the gestation phase. And usually the content is actually at its highest sometimes in the gestation phase, which is really important to identify, and that's a big opportunity for marketers today is to find channels that are in the gestation phase and be kind of the celebrity hit, we call it. So that point at the top of gestation and the bottom of escalation is what we call the celebrity hit. And every channel usually has a version of a celebrity hit that pushes it into escalation phase. And the escalation phase is when user adoption goes haywire, like, when you were listening to NPR on Twitter, NPR, and all of a sudden on NPR they were telling you, hey, you can tweet us, and hey, we have a Facebook fan page. And if you were watching your evening news, all of a sudden they had a Twitter handle and they were looking for tips, news tips via Twitter. That's a clear indication that it's in the escalation phase and probably near the top of the escalation phase. It's also when your boss or your CEO will come in and say, hey, we should be on Twitter. My son is on Twitter, and it's great. That's the escalation phase. So there's a great benefit to being there early, and we'll talk about why that might be. At the top of escalation, if there's no monetization model conceived of, this is where they get stuck. And monetization, you need to have a clear monetization model. For a lot of these new media channels, they don't. And what happens is it gets paralyzed there, and even your CEO at some point will say, why are we on Twitter? Like, what's the ROI? And Will was making a good point. People are worried about what's the ROI on a lot of these channels and participating in social channels specifically. And that's a clear indication that a lot of them, or some of the most popular ones, are stuck in monetization. There's also a lot of copycats show up in monetization, and that's what causes the next phase, which is consolidation. And usually somebody figures out how to monetize it. Flickr is a good example of that. And a lot of the other photo sharing sites, kind of plummet in usage because everybody realized there's a different opportunity. And so you see this kind of migration away from the channel. But at the end of the day, it ends up in what we call the maintain phase, which just means that user adoption equals attrition, and the platform is very stable, and there's a lot of time and energy you can devote there and actually expect a return on investment and know what it costs and also know the type of audience you're getting. So hopefully that makes sense in some sense, but I think it makes more sense when we talk about what forces act on it and then look at an example. So I'll do that quickly. There are 4 forces that act on any one channel as it moves through this. So I don't care if it's Foursquare, Gowalla, Amiando versus Meetup.com. Basically the amount of exposure it gets and the kind of quality content that's there, the engagement of the user base, the competition that shows up, and the momentum the channel has are the 4 forces that actually push someone, down the cycles. So that's our concept of kind of taking Brian Solis's conversation prism and trying to put some real theory and logic and a framework around it. So let's look at a couple of new media lifecycle analysis in action so that we can actually put some real world applications to this. So Twitter is the easiest one to kind of explain, especially for most of the viewers. I hope it's a very common platform that they're familiar with, and they may even know some of the stories about it. So let's look at the new media lifecycle for Twitter. And this is basically, it could be on the left axis, it's could be volume of users, it could be even just Google Insights relative scale of 0 to 100. But the core concept is that usually most of the metrics you end up looking at will divulge a very indicative life cycle phase analysis. So you can see the big broad phases here, but if we zoom in and kind of look at the early phases of Twitter, you'll start to see what actually causes these phase changes, all right? So this is just looking at experimentation, adoption, and gestation. So in experimentation, when it first started in 2006, they released an API, which is one of those things that's really smart early on, but only really useful when it gets really big. So this is a really interesting concept, and if you don't know what an API is, don't worry about it. It's just a technical, puzzle piece that allows other people to plug into Twitter, which eventually helps adoption. In the adoption phase, the marker for adoption was actually their appearance at South by Southwest, and you can see that little bump in interest there. And what that shows is that in the adoption phase, it was very unclear what the use of Twitter was for, right? When they went to South by Southwest, everyone said, "This is really cool. I can tweet out that I'm wearing clean socks and I bought new underwear and I'm eating cake," but it wasn't that useful. So what happened after a couple of months was, interest died down again and kind of flatlined. Now that flatline continued for a long, long time until you can see in about 2007, interest picked up again. And there are 2 key moments that actually define the push and gestation that are really interesting. Number one, @replies changed the kind of content that was on the platform, meaning I could now, @reply Will or Mike Lewis or anyone and have a conversation on a platform that used to be just a broadcast medium. So this was really important. You can see the little bump it caused. Now, when they went into and actually acquired a company called Surmise that was doing search on Twitter, you could now search and find conversations that were relevant or people that were talking about things that were relevant and now expand your network and @reply them. So this all of a sudden changed the nature of the content on the platform. And this is a really central moment. The 2 key moments that I would call the celebrity hits in Twitter's case that move it into escalation are the LA fires, and if anyone remembers, LA fires were, some really tragic kind of fires in LA County. And the communications were really hampered in the effort to, get information out fast enough through broadcast mediums as well as cell phones and all sorts of other network issues. So LA Times actually put a tweet stream on their homepage of all the information that was coming through from anyone, or fire departments, didn't matter who, but anyone to find information out about what was going on in the LA fires. Now this is a really pivotal moment because there's some use to the platform. It's really defined as all of a sudden this breaking news is very useful on this platform to actually track and push and follow. The second thing was hashtags, and hashtags were actually invented for the Atlanta gas crisis. And if you don't remember that one, basically in Atlanta it was really hard to get gas. People realized that you could use a hashtag #ATL gas and actually find out what gas stations had gas, where they were, and you could find out it instantly. So you didn't have to wait for the the television news to tell you where there was gas. You can find it instantly, drive over there, and get gas. So all of a sudden, it's a useful platform, and that's one of the key markers of gestation. When you see the content gelling and you see content working, that's when it moves into escalation. And you can see how giant the escalation phase is here. There's a huge adoption over a short amount of time, and at the top of that escalation point, that's when, your CEO is walking in and saying, get me on Twitter, and, your mom is asking you what Twitter is, and, everybody that knows you're in marketing asks you if there's any value to Twitter and why should I tweet. So the top of escalation is really, really interesting to me because as soon as you move into the monetization phase, you have to start looking at what actually moves the needle. And, this is a little old at this point. I'm hoping to update it soon. But you can see the big spikes here are news-related. Just like they were in gestation, nothing has really changed in that sense. So, if I'm a marketer and I'm looking at the life cycle of Twitter, stuck in monetization, number one, I'd be looking at whenever there's a live event, whether it's a conference or anything that I'm participating in, how can I use Twitter to expand interest and get people to follow what's going on in a live situation where, even in your small passion point or industry, there's news to cover. That's a very powerful opportunity, just given what we see in the new media life cycle. So, Twitter is still stuck in monetization, in my opinion. There were lots of copycats that have showed up. At one point, I know there were 200 or 300 copycat microblogging platforms, and we'll see, what happens as things move forward. If you look at Google Insights, where a lot of our data and analysis starts, this is what Twitter looks like. Now, if you're not familiar with Google Insights, that's okay, but I would recommend trying it, google.com/insights/search. It's a really amazing way to kind of get to the zeitgeist of the web community, right? So basically what we're looking at is relative searches over time for the term Twitter in the United States. And this is where, when Brad and I sit down to look at new media life cycles, this is where we start. We want to see how are things trending. We go in deeper. We dive into very individual months and years to determine what changes and what news stories happen, what PR events, what's actually going on the platform at the times when we see spikes, peaks, valleys, and that's really, really important. So you can see how, Twitter, has some peaks and valleys around the top of their escalation point and hasn't gone much further, since it hit the top of escalation. And we expect that to continue until we see some drastic changes in measuring return on investment in a very big way where everybody understands it. And number two, it has a monetization model that everybody trusts and understands. So let's talk about Groupon. Groupon seems to be the big hit of the day. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's excited about Groupon. Let's also talk about maybe Quora. Quora, everybody's psyched about in the social community. Everybody wants to know if it's the next big thing. And these are two great platforms that if I was sitting at my desk and my CMO walked in and said, I just heard about Quora, we need to figure out how to use it and get on there, the first thing I would do is try to put it in the context of other things we're doing. So let's take a look at just easy stuff you guys can do today. Go onto Google Insights, type in the word Groupon, and look at what it looks like for, just interest over time. And you can see here that there's this giant spike starting at the end of last year and, kind of moving up into the beginning of this year. That is really, really, initially looks like escalation to me. Now, it's not escalation, and there's a lot of reasons why, but we'll show you why you need to look at the context of a bigger universe, especially when it's relative interest over time, to determine if this is adoption or escalation. How much time and attention should I spend on this? If it's in adoption, probably not too much, unless there's real clear value there immediately, or you want to experiment, or you want to try something, but don't hinge your whole marketing effort for the next month on it, right? So this is what Groupon looks like. All right, let's look at, let's look at Quora and how Quora looks, okay? Here's Quora. Looks like it's maybe been around for a while, but we're just looking at 1 year, so it looks like January 09 to January 11, 2 years, sorry. And all of a sudden you see this giant spike in January. Again, you cannot skip phases, so this isn't escalation. There's no way it's escalation. that looks like experimentation to me, and we're just moving into adoption. So when all the buzz and hype in our kind of echo chamber starts to escalate, you have to really take notice and really think about what it means to you, the marketer, when it comes to actually evaluating these platforms. So here's what Quora looks like versus Groupon. So Groupon is red, Quora is blue. So relative to Groupon, Quora is not a very big, point of interest today, and that's why as soon as you start to put some scale to these things, you start to realize, maybe Quora is not as big as the buzz seems to lead me to believe. And when I say big, it just means that the writer universe hasn't adopted the platform yet. They're not talking about it. They're not looking for it. They're not looking for advice on how to use it. They're not looking for information about it. That's what changes a phase specifically.
Andrew.
Yeah.
This is Will.
There you go.
A couple of people were asking if you could just give a quick summary of what Quora is compared to Groupon.
Yeah, sorry.
Different.
Yeah, sorry. That was jerky of me to assume. See, that's what happens when you get in the echo chamber of doing this all day. You just assume everybody knows what Quora is. So Quora is very, very different than Groupon. First of all, is one of the reasons I picked it. But Quora is basically questions and answers. And an environment in which you can interact with a number of people to answer questions that range from what's your favorite shoes to what's this one? Why are we losing social media to the PR industry? So there's something by Robert Scoble, very controversial topic. It's got 31 answers. Obviously a discussion going on there. So that's what Quora is. I recommend trying it out. None of these channels I would recommend avoiding. Give it 2, 10, 15 minutes, but don't spend all day there and start, hoping that it's going to, really take off unless you've seen it kind of move through the phases. I hope that helps. Will, was that a good explanation?
Yeah, and in fact, Quora is just popping up right now because there's a tiny bit of lag, but now we're all seeing Quora, so that helps. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Well, it may be a longer lag than I thought.
You know what? There was a big lag, and then there was almost no lag, and then now there's a little bit of a lag again.
Oh, okay. Well, tell me when you're on the Tumblr Quora Groupon Ning slide. That'll help me just get my pacing down. Again, trying to make sure we're looking at these in context.
We see them on. We see that slide now.
Oh, great. Okay. Trying to make sure that we see these channels in the context of other channels really helps prioritize our efforts, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tumblr. Tumblr's been around for a long time. It's TUMBLR. And it's somewhere between, a WordPress blog and Twitter in the sense that it's a very easy to use content management system in a sense that has a community built around it. And it's a really powerful platform that is doing really well, but isn't getting the attention, I would say, that maybe Quora or Groupon are getting. And when you start to look at this chart, for example, you start to see all of a sudden that Tumblr is about maybe 40% more, generating 40% more interest in the marketplace than even Groupon is. And that to me says this is a sleeping giant. This is something that's going through the right kind of phase evolution that is ready and dying for a celebrity hit to take it to the level where all of a sudden Tumblr could be the next Twitter or Tumblr could be the next Facebook. And those are the ones where you want to, really be focusing your attention and energy and effort to understand and watch them move and evolve. That's really valuable as a marketer, as a community member, even a leader of a community that's doing a lot in the social networking space. You want to look at these platforms, try them out, and give them more and more time the more you see them evolve. So hopefully that gives you some context for those. Now let's add Twitter to that exact same search. Tumblr, Quora, Groupon, Ning, and now we've added Twitter. You can see that Quora, Tumblr, Groupon don't even get close to the level of interest in the marketplace that Twitter has today. And so if I was going to tell you, where to spend your time and energy, it wouldn't be on Groupon, Quora, Tumblr, or Ning for that matter. The bulk of your energy, should be focusing on those that are in monetization, consolidation, or experimentation, because you'll see this time and time again the spikes and valleys that don't actually create real value in the marketplace. Let's look at something that's really innovative, I think. You can use Google Insights and the same exact concept of the new media life cycle to determine interest in even categories like apps. So this is looking at search terms in the United States for iPad apps, iPhone apps, Android apps, Palm apps, Windows mobile apps, right? And what you see here is that in 2007, the iPhone app created a market. So before that, people were talking about these things, but they were real small, when it comes to apps in general. And if you add apps to the search, you can actually see how the market was created. But every July, they release a new phone. You can see that spike in interest in the actual, search here. But you can see also that Android apps has had a slow and steady rise. And Android apps, I've thought for a long time, has been going through the right evolutionary phases to all of a sudden have a celebrity hit. And that's what they're waiting for. And if I was going to tell you today to build an app, it wouldn't be on the iPad. It would be on the Android platform. Because watching the evolution happen, watching what moves that market, it's dying for the celebrity breakout hit from a brand to take it to the next level, and that's where I would spend my time and energy. Palm apps, you can actually even see when the iPhone came out in 2009, Palm released a phone, and there was some initial excitement and interest, and then it's died out completely. So if I was, even if I was in the financial markets, I don't know if anyone from the finance industry is looking, but these are the kinds of things that I would start charting, tracking, and understanding what moves these markets. And if I was going to invest in Palm in 2009, it might have looked like a good idea, but if I knew the evolutionary cycles it needs to go through, I would have avoided that investment. All right, so that's the new media life cycle in action. Hopefully that's helpful. We've got a couple more minutes before we check in, so I'm going to talk quickly about organic growth versus marketing-oriented growth, and hopefully this will also help you in understanding what actually kind of time, effort, and energy it takes to really build through a cycle. So you can use this for applications, but you can also use this for communities. If you're not familiar with Hacker News, it's a very popular news aggregator. It's like Dig, but for techies. Maybe that's the best way to explain it. And it was started by basically an incubator called Y Combinator. And this is what it looks like. It's nothing special. It's not some giant application. It's not really wonderfully amazing. But it's a really vibrant community of really niche audience that's very, very powerful. And you can see how this, just in this chart alone, this community has built itself since 2008. Slow and steady always is a really clear sign that it's building itself the right way. If I see a giant spike in here, I'd be cautious. I'd wonder what caused the spike. Are they trying to market it? Is it going to change the community? There are a lot of dynamics that happen that could ruin Hacker News if all of a sudden they start putting up billboards, let's say, for it. So it's in gestation right now, and it might be really big someday. And if I was in the tech community, I'd start watching Hacker News and trying to understand what kind of content works there, who the community members are, and if there's any value. If I was a VC, I'd definitely check it out. There are definitely opportunities here to understand it. Now, there's been a lot of talk about how Ford's done really innovative stuff online with really great content and really wonderful people. And this is a part of their kind of Ford Fiesta campaign. This is the most recent screenshot of it. But the Fiesta movement was basically a brand building a community online. And when Brad and I started researching this, we knew it was very powerful. They were doing a really good job generating interest. But we also found the Ford Fiesta forum, right? Really freaking ugly site. It's full of ads of all sorts of, kinds, shapes, and sizes, but it's unbelievably vibrant. Huge amount of conversation, unbelievably deep and rich, users and brand advocates are here. And when we looked at this, just using Google Insights to understand what's the Ford Fiesta forum versus Ford Fiesta movement built by Ford, what's the difference here? Now, the blue line is the organic forum, the real ugly one I just showed you. You see that slow and steady growth over time to build a really rich community that has legs, right? Versus the Fiesta movement, which is a manufactured campaign by Ford, generates this huge spike in interest. You can see it there, that red spike as the Fiesta movement hits its peak, and and now is trailing downward and spiraling downward, I would say. Eventually it's going to be at zero interest again. However, that Ford campaign created this huge spike for an already vibrant community that it's pretty much retained in the sense that, yeah, it has a big valley there. I'm not sure what happened. But, as you research this stuff, it might have been, and this is just a hypothesis, what if Ford had offered to help this community? It might have been a longer, more sustained, more valuable investment from the marketing team's side. So it's a hypothesis, but one worth thinking about. Another good example of this that's worth just chatting about is Citrix. Worked with the really talented guys at New Marketing Labs in Boston to come up with a new concept called work shifting. Now, this is a genius idea, right? Help people use products like GoToMeeting in a new context and even create a new term around it, right? So work shifting is a really nice community that New Marketing Labs has built with really wonderful content and great interaction on it. However, you can use other tools. I'm using Compete here just to look at traffic to try to get some idea of it, because when I looked at Google Insights, I didn't see big, wide adoption of the term. So, this looks, again, to me like it's a manufactured community that I'm not sure has legs. It should have evolved with a, bottom left to top right evolution. Instead, it started with a big bang and then has occasional big bangs, and I wonder why that is. But if when the work shifting community and New Marketing Labs go back and look at it, I think they're going to see that maybe there's a way to build that slow organic growth by bringing the right people on early and really building it through the 7 phases of the life cycle. So it's been a confusing landscape, unbelievably so when you look at the conversation prism. I'm almost ready for those channels for us to evaluate. So if you haven't thought of one or just have one now, make sure you put it in. I'll just have 2 more words for you. Basically, we are lemmings, people. This is what the new media life cycle looks like when you look at it as people. This is a great Gary Larson cartoon that I use all the time, right? You've got those experimenters who are diving right into the water. You've got those adopters who are like, hey, this looks interesting. Let me see if I can add some value. The water looks warm. Then you've got the guys in gestation who are like, hey, there must be something good down there. And then all of a sudden, everybody else just follows. They're not even sure why. And that's when you get, the news telling you to join Twitter, and then I have my mom off there in the corner. But when you start to think about community growth like this, it can be a really, really powerful notion to take hold of. And when you apply just the concept of the new media life cycle over what we call the diversified distribution portfolio, it helps you understand as a marketer, or even as a person for that matter, what you should spend your time and energy and budget on, right? Should you spend it on things in the experimentation phase? Well, don't spend too much. If you're looking at Quora or Groupon right now, 10% of your budget would be a lot to spend on either one of those, but maybe both of those or 10 other platforms put into that 10% actually starts to be something meaningful and is good experimentation for a brand. Gestation and escalation, I recommend spending the same amount of time and budget on, because it's still a big crapshoot. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't even know how to measure it. But monetize and consolidation, those are very clear places to participate. Maintain phase is a no-brainer. When we work with our clients to help define this is what gives you focus in a new media world that can be extremely confusing. So that's pretty much my hypothesis. I do have, an offer for a free new media lifecycle report, our next one coming out, if you want to check that out. And also this presentation will be available. And I know Will's going to send this stuff out, so I won't spend any time on this. We can just move on to actually looking at something live if we have some time.
Yep, we have a couple of minutes. So, Andrew, just a couple of people asked if you could just show the new media life cycle graphic again.
Yeah, sure. There's a bunch of these on Flickr too. Somewhere I can tweet that out right after the webinar. But yeah, this is the new media life cycle writ large.
All right, cool. All right, so we have a couple different kinds of categories that people had asked about that maybe you could look at and kind of do an on-the-fly comparison for.
Yeah, sure.
So, Sal, what category do we have here?
Hi, Andrew. This is Sal.
Hey, Sal.
A lot of people are asking about sort of the location-based sites. So if you maybe Scavenger, Foursquare, GoWalla.
Okay. All right. So can you guys see Google Insights all right?
Yes, we can.
All right. Cool. So like you can even start by looking at a market. Whoops. Maybe I take the hyphen out. And this isn't when you're using Google Insights, you kind of have to start to understand what terms seem to work and what don't when you're looking at concepts. So I'm gonna hopefully talk and move, but location-based services. Okay, look, looks like a concept that's been around for a long time, had a spike in 2004, and maybe I'm using the wrong term, but let's take a look at GoWalla. What were the other ones? Foursquare?
Yeah, and Scavenger with
yeah.
L's.
Yeah, sure.
And I
know
think
those
maybe
guys.
GoWalla might have 2 L's. I had to check.
Does it? I can't remember.
Yeah, it has 2 L's.
Okay. All right, so there you go. So now we're looking at location-based services with that big blue line that I just showed you. And you can see how small of a concept that is in the rest of the universe, even just looking at this chart here, right? Pulu doesn't even show up. It's basically nothing. But you can see that Foursquare, for some reason, has some noise here, and I bet it could be related to the game, the kids' game Foursquare. So there are filters and ways we could get out that noise. But just keep in mind, it looks like it's very static over time. There's no big giant jumps in interest in Foursquare. But this is what we see today, right? This giant push into Foursquare land over time. And that's obviously the forerunner in the location-based world. You can see GoWalla made a spike here, and that spike seems to correlate. Actually, let's try zoom in if I can do this quickly. January 09 to today. Get a better look. So these spikes correlate exactly. It looks like the same week of March, right? When GoWalla did something and Foursquare did something. Now, those are the interesting points that I want to find out what moves the whole location-based market. So I'd use things like Google Search, Google News Search, sorting by date, making sure I'm getting the date range right for this exact period, and try to figure out what happened, even in the blogosphere maybe, to move this interest in both platforms. And sometimes it's as easy as a Mashable article or just a blog post by someone no one knows, but all of a sudden gets picked up. So it looks like if we call this the base around 20, these guys have probably moved almost all the way through adoption, and they're struggling getting into the gestation phase, which means people are having a really hard time understanding why they should participate maybe in location-based services. And I see the same is pretty indicative here of GoWalla, right? Big interest in spike, and then static with some little spikes, occasionally. And then Scavenger looks like it got some big press hit or something in October 31st. So if I was a startup, and I've looked at this in a lot of different perspectives today, marketing, just personal use and understanding, and finance we talked about. But if I was a startup, I would actually look at this and say, you know what, I don't want press too early, I don't want press too late. When we talked about those 4 forces, one of those big key forces that affects momentum either positively or negatively, depending on when it happens, is the press paying attention to your platform. So it's really telling to know that, hey, you know what, we're only in the adoption phase. I don't want to get a huge influx of users or interest because they may not find my platform useful yet. I need to understand more about how I can get the right kind of people involved to create the right kind of experience and really make this work. So those are some of the keys. And again, let's try to put this in perspective. And just as we've used Twitter all day, we'll use Twitter again. That's how it compares to Twitter just in the last year. So location-based services, although everybody thinks it's the next big thing, it might be, but it's got a long way to go before it sees the likes of an escalation phase and the second either monetization or move into maintain phase for this to actually work. That help, Will? Was that informative?
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good illustration. We had a few people guessing what might have been happening in March. I have a guess.
Oh, what was it?
Well, somebody guessed spring break.
Okay, could be.
Location-based. I remember being an event in Austin where location-based services were really promoted.
That's South by Southwest?
Yeah. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm going to bet you're right.
I think we got about 10 minutes left. It might be good for us to do just a couple of quick wrap-up items and then go into Q&A.
Yeah, sure. I don't have any core wrap-up items specifically, but if you do, hit them.
Yeah, we do. So
all right, good.
Let me just kind of a few, just a couple quick items, and then we have some questions that have come in from the audience. So, Andrew, thank you. That was a really interesting session. It was a really interesting dynamic way of presenting, and it's that chart that you showed, that graph, is something that we've all seen before, that life cycle, but I don't know that I'd seen it codified in quite that manner before. So that was really interesting, both from a perspective of someone who's going to be, choosing which places to market to, but also someone who might have a service or be working on a service that is going into the market as a way to try and understand where your own offerings are at. So thanks a lot for that. I just want to tell everyone who's on the webinar that we appreciate you attending. We're going to go to Q&A in a minute, but if you want to find out more about awareness and the webinars that we offer, which, as I mentioned, are free and always feature really interesting speakers like Andrew, there's a bunch of different ways you can follow us. You can follow us at Awareness Inc. webinars on Facebook. Twitter is a great way to follow us. We also have blogs on our corporate website and a pretty active social media marketing best practices area on Facebook that we also use. We have a really interesting webinar coming up that on the 9th. It's not interesting just because of its name, but it is NARF busting, featuring John Nielsen from Are You Frank? NARF, for those of you who are word inclined, you may notice is Frank backwards. So it's exactly right. It's the opposite of frankness. How to bust NARF, how to NARF bust. And I'm sure with a title like that, it's going to be a very interesting presentation. It's free. You can sign up on our website, awarenessnetworks.com, and we look forward to seeing everybody there in a couple weeks. With that, we have a few questions that have popped up. So, Andrew, if you're available to stick around for about 10 more minutes, we'd love to ask you some of these questions that have come up from the audience.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Andrew, this is Sal. One question that came up was with the location-based graph that you just did, would you be able to incorporate Facebook Places into that graph?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key things is to kind of adjust your search terms that you're using in Google Insights, or even add other metrics or sources of data to it. But if you're just using Google Insights, simply adding Facebook Places, probably in quotes, would give you the best, potential results and actually showcase what you're looking for. I'm going to just look very quickly to see if I can give you any insight. We've actually talked about doing this. Yeah, so I know you guys aren't seeing my screen, but the big spike in Foursquare interest that happened the week of August 15th was actually caused by Facebook Places announcement. And then Facebook Places drops off the radar screen down about to the interest of Scavenger in October and November. So, those big press announcements for something like Facebook Places that's moving into a new space are actually a potential huge detriment to actually Facebook being a viable player in that market. And it's one of the things I'd avoid if I was sitting on the Facebook board, but, I'm not. Rolling out Facebook Places in the right way would look like maybe an accelerated version of what we see Foursquare's evolution being, which is slow and steady in the right way. And I would have rolled Facebook Places out to a select group of people that I knew over time would help me expand it. And Google's very good at this with their beta concept, right? Google understands this concept very well of using the new media lifecycle concept to actually release things over time, to build the right interest, get the right feedback loop, evolve the platform in the right way, and then make it public.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Another question that we had here, and something that I was sort of wondering about, is the celebrity moment. I mean, what if this celebrity moment doesn't happen, or is it inevitable once once it has a certain level of usage? Just talk about what makes that happen.
Sure. Okay. Well, so celebrity moments, in the case of Twitter that we looked at, right? A celebrity moment is a natural disaster in that case. The LA fires or Atlanta gas crisis. Those are kind of happenstance, and those are definitely deep in the evolutionary cycle. Sometimes just timing is right, and you get lucky, right? But I do believe they can be manufactured in the right way, even in working with brands. And I've seen platforms do this very well. And since we're talking about location-based services, let's talk about Foursquare and even their, work with brands like Starbucks to try to understand what even a Foursquare mayorship means. And if I'm a Foursquare mayor of a Starbucks, I get a free latte. All of a sudden, there's a reason to participate on Foursquare. So, that they're building their own celebrity moment potential by working with brands to see what works and what doesn't, and then hopefully when they have the formula right, they'll be able to work with a brand to prove the potential that'll start the right kind of media coverage and actually push that moment extremely rapidly.
Okay. I have actually a little off-topic question, but there's been a couple inquiries about what you're using to present your slides. So if you want to go a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I usually preface my presentation with the fact that I'm using something called Prezi. It's P as in Peter, R-E-Z as in zebra, I.com. And you can try it for free. I've been using it for about 2 years, but it's basically, you can use it online or offline, and they have an iPad app I think they just released that I have not tried, to be honest. But it's an infinite landscape that you can use to present. So you basically can zoom all over the place. You just import everything from videos to images to, you can write text in there. You can create frames, and you just create this huge landscape and then program a series of moves around it. And that's what I've been using today. So I would, if you're talking about early adoption, Prezi is one of those things that is really kind of moving slowly, is changing rapidly, and they're doing a really good job of trying to get the right people interested in it. And you'll start to see it more in the TED conferences. If you guys watch TED, TED has put some money into funding Prezi, and you'll start to see more and more TED users using it.
All right. Well, it certainly makes for a very dynamic experience when you're doing the content as opposed to the traditional slide view, which is a lot more linear feeling, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's still linear. It's kind of an illusion in a sense, But you can show relationships really well between the things you're talking about and try to encapsulate ideas. So it's a great way to present.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing it with everybody today. And my apologies if any of the lag that had nothing to do with Prezi or Andrew negatively impacted some of the experience. But when it was, for most of the time, it was synced pretty nicely, and it was pretty cool. So, Andrew, we're just about out of time, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for this great presentation. I want to thank all of our attendees. We had a pretty big number of people joining us today. So it's always fun. Information about our upcoming webinars, as I mentioned, is at awarenessnetworks.com, and anyone who wants to reach Andrew can do so on Twitter with the handle that we published before.
You got it.
That's about it. Andrew, do you have anything you want to say to wrap things up?
No. I know there are a lot of questions on Twitter, and I'll try to answer each and every one in 140 characters or less, but I'm hopping on a plane right now, so I'll do it tonight or tomorrow morning, and look forward to hopefully helping everybody move forward with it. And thank you guys for hosting this. It's been a really fun experience.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thanks again. And so thanks, everybody, and we'll see you guys at our demo webinar next week and at the NARF busting a week after that. And safe travels, Andrew.
Hey, thanks. NARF buster. I like it.
Yeah, NARF busting. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.